Damian, it's been like 15 months since we've seen you fight, and it's been a kind of a crazy 15 months, right? I mean, what has life been like for you? I mean, were you thinking about fighting at all, or did you decide to kind of stay away during this whole crazy pandemic time?
No, I was thinking about fighting all the time. You know, that's what I do. That's what I love. But the world was crazy, like you said. I remember when I finished with Ben, I said, okay, I have a couple more fights. Then 2020 will be, the end of my career, and it will be nice and this and that. And then I get into Brazil and I fight in Brasilia. The first event without a crowd was pretty awkward. And I was telling the other interviews that when you always been fighting all your life with crowds, since the time I was fighting jiu-jitsu, there is always crowds, especially the wars, big crowds. You kind of take for granted the fans, and you think it's nice, but I'm too focused on what I'm doing that I'm gonna enjoy after. But once you fight without crowd, you understand the importance of the energy or wherever you believe to the show, and the fans are part of the show. So for me, it's very important, and I'm very glad to fight for a big crowd again.
Very nice. I know, like during this time away, you got your 5th degree black belt, right? And you've been telling the history of jiu-jitsu. I mean, have you during this time have you been focused like more on jiu-jitsu than MMA?
Did you follow that?
Yeah.
I'm still doing. Yeah, I did 5 episodes. I want to do more. It's very nice, I'm very excited to do that, and I've been focused on the jiu-jitsu history, but of course training, I've been focused on MMA, in jiu-jitsu for MMA like I always do, and it doesn't change. And that's actually what I love very much, how to apply jiu-jitsu inside the octagon, and that's what interests me most. And it's funny because it's a so new sport that every camp I found out some stuff, some new stuff. Even people, they love when I say, but even some details from the back attacks and how to choke, I've been evolving a lot the last year. So, and the cage stuff and things against the cage. So it's very interesting for me. And of course, when you don't have a fight coming up, you kind of evolve in this certain pace. But when you have a fight coming up, a camp, then you evolve much faster.
So to me, it felt like you were trying to like wind your MMA career down, like you felt like you were in. But it sounds like you're just as passionate about it now as ever. So I mean, are we at the end of your fighting career, or do you think there's still a future ahead?
Yeah, this will depend on Saturday. Of course, I'm near the end and can be the last fight. But you know what? I've been performing so well in training camp, and I've been feeling so well that I could do one more or a couple more. Most likely one more after that. But of course, it depends because you perform as well in the training camp, and sometimes, you cannot translate to the octagon. So if I can translate well, and of course UFC, and then they want me to do one more fight, I would do. If not, then would be the last one. I don't pretend to fight in another organization. I want to end up in the UFC, but of course I want to do one or a couple fights, jiu-jitsu fights after that. And at my sponsor Spider Championship, but who knows? Let's see Saturday what's gonna happen.
All right, so was it important then for you to wait to have a crowd because it could be your last performance? Was that mattered to you?
Yeah, of course. You know what? I was watching, like I saw Rogério fought in Abu Dhabi, right, with Mauricio. Eduardo was there, my manager, and that was last Rogério's Nogueira fight. I was so, for me, it was sad that he did his last fight without a crowd. And not just him, but other fighters too. And I was, I don't want that for me. I don't want to end up my career without a crowd. It would be so sad, at least in my opinion. And thanks God, the events just come back to the normal, are coming back slowly, and that's, that's why I'm here. I'm very glad for that.
Nice. What do you think about the matchup? I mean, obviously anybody you fight is going to be younger than you, right? They're going to be probably a little less accomplished. So what do you think about Bilal as an opponent?
he's a great upcoming guy. He's evolving for sure, and although his background is wrestling, that's at least as far as I know, he started with wrestling. He's a good wrestler. He used the wrestling, but in the late years, he been striking much more, and he believes and he trusts in his striking abilities. So he's like every top 15 guy, he's a pretty tough fighter. It's not an easy fight, but I've been in this situation so many times in my life. Almost 14 years in the UFC. In October, it will be 14 years since I did my first UFC fight, but I did close the contract. I think around June, July. I don't remember. Well, I need to check my emails. But so it's 14 years, and it's so great to be in this organization for 14 years.
Yeah. Last thing for me, hopefully it's not your last fight, but if for any reason it is, how do you want people to remember you, to talk about you? What do you want people to say about you and your legacy and your career?
I'm very happy when I hear from my peers, the other fighters, that they admire me, like Charles now. He just won the championship, and he said in Brazil, I think Demian is still the best one in Jiu-Jitsu. That makes me so happy because, to get recognized by your peers, it's great. But for the fans, I want them to remember me about, of course, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and everything that I represent behind that name of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and everything that this represents. And my posture, as a martial artist, and I think, that's it.
Demian, right here. Was Bilal the only name they offered you, or there are other fights that they came to you with during the pandemic?
They offered Chimaev before, but that was end of the year. So Eduardo, my manager, was talk with them, but we didn't get to close the contract. And after that, he closed the contract to fight. No, we didn't close. But then he fought. He was closing to fight Edwards. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he had the COVID and stuff. So, and then they offer also Vicente Luque, but then I don't know why we didn't close too. They offer, but then they decide put him against Woodley, and so there was a fight that was up for, but they offer, and then they put him against Woodley, and then finally they offer Bilal, and then we got it.
With the Chimaev, were you interested in the Chimaev fight? Because then I think he had already had a fight booked, and Dana said he's going to fight you next. So he fights this guy, and then he fights you.
And he in that time was interesting because he was his hype was really high, but then Eduardo started negotiation, didn't happen. But right now, I don't think about that because I'm more about, doing this fight and see if I'm going to stop or not and this kind of thing.
And all these names that you mentioned, they're all young men in their primes of their career. You obviously, like you said, you might have one or two more fights left. So do you like getting all these young names offered to you, or do you want to fight the other veterans?
No, because everybody's younger than me now, like you said. So I don't care. I don't care because my thermometer, my parameter, can I say that, is how I'm training. And of course I'm training with everybody younger than me, 20-something, 30s. I know I keep the pace with this guy, I keep going. So if I don't feel well, I'm never gonna come here just because I wanna make, the money. I don't care about that, I never care about that. Actually my first fight, in 1996, that is not even in Sherdog, the fight that is in the documentary Combate did in Brazil, at ufcdocs.com.br. I paid to fight. I paid 30 reais at the time. It's like $10, something like that at the time, dollars. So, and I paid so many jiu-jitsu fights to fight in the championship, so that I'm not here for the money. The money is great, and it's so nice to do something that you love. I used to say, in Brazil, we don't make too much money, but we having fun. And now I can say I make money and having fun, so it's perfect word.
Dan Hardy actually did an interview, and he said he would like to see like a masters division in MMA, where for like people 35 and older.
Who said?
Dan Hardy.
Okay.
So like him and Matt Brown and Carl Scott could all fight. Would you like to see like a masters division in MMA?
I don't know. It would be nice, of course, but I like to fight, everyone. I don't like to be separated by age, because if I'm feeling that I'm, doing well, I can do with anyone. And in the fight sport, if you see the history of fight sports, there was many, like I was studying the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Jiu-Jitsu, and when the Japanese came and even the American catch wrestlers here, they were fighting sometimes till 50-something years old. Of course, it was different time, but also there was no time limit. There was crazy rules, and people were fighting. And you can see like old boxers fighting, like George Foreman, when he won the world title. So it's all about how you're feeling. And I think our society, of course, is very obsessed with age. So every time I did journalism degree, I did journalism in college, and every time you write about somebody, you put the age, after, and everybody just talk about that, and it's interesting. But I think it makes difference. But what really makes difference is how you're feeling. So if you're feeling, and I'm not lying, because some people say, some people, they just lie. No, I'm feeling great. They don't feel. They feel like shit, and because they are older and stuff. But I'm pretty sincere. Of course, fight is a fight. I don't know how I'm gonna perform, but at training, I'm feeling great. I don't have any injuries, so that's what matters for me.
Demian, right here.
Right
here. Jim Grieshaber, excuse me. Just your losses that you've had recently, no one wants to leave anything on the table, but the guys that you're losing to are champions and the last two #1 contenders, and then you have the win over Jorge Masvidal too. So you're performing so well. You talked about how you're training. What is it that you're doing, to feel so good at an older age, and what are you doing differently than what you did when you were younger to get ready for a fight?
Yeah, what I think is when you're getting older, you need to make less mistakes. I think for everybody, not just for me as a fighter, but for everybody in this room, if you're getting older, you get to make less mistakes to have a good life. What I mean is, you need to pay a little bit more attention to what you eat, not just when you're fighting, but every day. You need to pay a little bit more attention in how you sleep, and not during the training camp, but every day. Little more attention in what you put in, the exercise you do, what you put inside your mind, the mental part. So, and this must be something like an everyday life, a way of life, or a lifestyle, not just for a camp. And that's where I understand. Before, let's say I would, eat well when I was in camp, and then after camp I was just eat all the shit that I want. And now I keep, I do eat bad stuff, but let's say I do eat bad stuff one night, the next day, sometimes I fasting, or I do eat bad stuff one day, the other day I will be very clean. So it's more learn how to balance and don't make those mistakes. It's pretty much the basic things that people don't pay attention, like sleeping, eating, and mental health, and these kind of things that we need to be aware. And this will help. Of course, my style of fighting helps because I'm not a brawler, and that's I think this helps.
What about that mentality, the mindset that you talked about? Can you go a little bit more into detail, some of the things you do to stay sharp mentally and to stay focused on what you're doing?
As the time goes by, you learn how to don't get in some tricks that your mind can play on you. Like, for instance, this thing about last fight. If I was focused on that this week, okay, or during the camp, this can be my last fight. For sure, this will gonna interfere in my performance because I never been in this spot before. That could be the last fight. So what I do is every time I have this kind of thoughts, I try to understand that this is really what it is. It's just another fight. Because we never know what's gonna happen. Life is crazy. I remember I was leaving the fight when I just won against Gunnar Nelson in Vegas and go to my locker room. to watch Aldo's fight against McGregor. And I remember going through the corridor, and then Michael Bisping was there. I stopped to talk to him. Man, I see his eye, and his eye was pretty hurt. He couldn't move well, one of his eyes. And then I remember talking to Eduardo. We came back to the locker room, and we are happy. But I was talking to Eduardo. I said, man, how he keep fighting? It's crazy. And I think he will end up. He's finishing his career soon. And then after a couple months after that, he won the title. So life is so crazy that you cannot put something in your mind that you don't have control. I don't have control if this is going to be or not my last fight. So in the end of the day, it's another fight with a great opponent, tough opponent, and I need to be focused on that. So that's one thing, answering your question, that I think, I'm paying more attention. It's like, don't let your thoughts take you out of the path.
Last one for me. Athletes talk all the time about how the game or the sport slows down as you get older. Mm-hmm. So what you lose physically, you make up for mentally. Mm-hmm. How has that been for you?
I think I've been growing mentally, but I think physically, there is just one thing that I feel. It's nothing like I don't feel slower. I don't feel with less gas or this kind of thing. What I feel that is very interesting, I remember Murilo Bustamante, who was a UFC champion too, he told me one time, he said, Demian, when you get older, what you feel, and I was like 30 years old or something, or even less, your injuries takes more time to heal. That's what I feel. And exactly what I feel nowadays. I remember I was like Wolverine before, I get some hit and I get some bruise or something. In one day, it was gone. I was impressed at that time how far. And nowadays, man, sometimes I get something little thing, like I get a tendonitis on my elbow last year and took like 3 months to recover. I said, shit, what's happening? Thank you.
Demian, back here. You fought such an incredible list of opponents throughout your career. I'm just curious if there's somebody that stands out to you as maybe the toughest out of all these great fighters you've fought.
Man, that's a really, really tough question. I think the toughest fight that I had was Anderson, because he was pretty much in his prime, and I was not ready for that fight. I wasn't too young, but I was like 31, 32, but I was young for the sport. I didn't have too much experience, and the weight division was not the best for me. He was pretty big. He was in his prime. Actually, he was supposed to fight Chael, and then Chael couldn't fight. Then they offered this fight to Vitor. Vitor couldn't fight, so it ended up in me. And you never say no to a title fight. So I said, okay, let's go. But for sure was not the timing. And it was pretty tough. And the fight, when the fight started, I realized it was a different animal. I never had so much problem with distance in the first couple rounds. I couldn't understand the distance because he's not just, long and tall. He managed, that's his strength, he managed the distance so well. And his jab was so tough. I never got something like that. So for the first time in my life, in that time, I was afraid to be knocked out. Because I've been knocked out 2 times in my life, right? But it was out of the blue. I was fighting, boom. And it was not even like a classical knockout. It was more like a knockdown because I hit the ground and I woke up right away. But in that fight, I was, maybe it's a matter of time. For the first time, I was afraid to be knocked out. And then fight keep going, and then I said, okay, it doesn't. I go to between some rounds, I blow my nose and my eyes, because you cannot blow your nose. But I'm not boxer. I didn't know that. They didn't know that at that time. So just close my eyes. My eyes is this side. I cannot watch. I cannot see from one eye. Then I said, okay, it doesn't matter. He's beating me. I just gonna give my head to him, and if he wanna beat, he will beat. But at least I'm gonna, I change my stance to trying to just avoid with the distance to more like aggressive, more, like Mike Tyson style, to go forward. And then when I did that, he was kind of afraid to jab because he said, okay, this guy, he wants to take me down. He knew he was winning. So the first thing I did, I faked that I was going to the leg, and I came back with a hook, and I really landed that hook. I think that it was today he would go down, But in that time, he had a pretty tough chin. I remember my hand I feel my hand, I felt my hand, I said, my God. And then I run into him, try to knee or some crazy stuff. Then he recovered, I land one more good one. And then after that, the fight started to come back, I remember. And I remember his corner said that what they said after me, Anderson, you got to jab, you got to do this. And I said, I'm not finding the distance anymore. And that's interesting because that's the same feeling I had at the beginning of the fight. And then they said the corner, after third round or something, he said between the rounds, I'm not finding the distance. And that fight was important for me because it proved that I could, last and resist with that guy, even in a very bad situation. It's not that, I was able to take him down and use my game. I was all the time in his game. And I think a lot of people start to respect me after that. And I think that fight, even though it was a loss, put me in a different spot in the eyes of everybody, the media, the fans, and the coaches and the fighters, everybody.
How do you think he's going to do in his boxing match?
It depends, Anderson, he's still great. He's a genius on his stand-up game. But I don't know how he's doing, how he's training, because it doesn't matter how good you are, if you're not in, training in a good shape. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the case, but if you're going there just for the money, it's very likely that I don't think that's a reason that's gonna make you be sharp. But if he's going there for the challenge and he's training well, he's not injured, then I think he can do. Well, who is fighting? Roy Jones?
Julio Cesar Chavez.
Julio Cesar Chavez, yeah. It's a tough one,
All right, best of luck, Demian. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good. Okay. Guys, thank you very much. I see you on Saturday.